Welcome to Roar Stories. This is a space for real stories of resilience, courage, and the decision to keep going when it would be easier to stop. And the Roar Gallery is a collection of those stories. And wait till you hear our guest story today. Dawn Jackson is here all the way from Oregon, and she's here to share her story with all of us because the human race is not meant to be walked or run alone. And Dawn, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Kimberly, for inviting me to join you today. I look forward to our conversation.
I am really excited about all of the wisdom that you have to share with us and the things that you've overcome and how it's really relevant in all of our lives. So give us a little taste of who you are today. And I know that you just got married, so feel free to share your
I
joy
did.
about that.
Well, let's see. I have been a nurse for 30 years, but I left nursing in 2022. And so I became a grief recovery method specialist. So I help people navigate loss and transition so that they can find joy again and thrive um, after going through many things in my own life. And I am happy to report, like you just said, I just got married. And I never thought that I would be married a second time in my life after things that had occurred earlier in life. So that is a big roar for me, like super exciting that my life has come what it's become. And, I'm self employed and there's so much joy in my life where for many years, I didn't know why there wasn't joy. I didn't know why I wasn't experiencing that. Like many people, I'd
Yeah.
look at and I thought, oh gosh, they're so happy and they're thriving. And why am I not thriving?
Yeah. And I think, a lot of that is um, inauthenticity that we see
Mhm.
on social media. And, we never put our best or our worst foot forward on social media. We've always got
Mhm.
the kids are clean and the house is clean and the yard is perfect and our hair is
Right.
perfect. Right? No one ever has a problem on social media.
Yes, I can relate to that.
Yeah. And then, and I think that we go through, especially as women, um, we start comparing ourselves. And, you mentioned loss after loss after loss. And, and I lived loss after loss after loss as well. And I know that's why we're both here sharing good news to encourage others to never give up. Um, but all of that to say, when another loss comes, or we're dealing with the previous loss, and then, we doom scroll, or, we turn on the TV and we
Mhm.
see these wonderful, happy people who have 5-minute problems and they're resolved in 43 minutes before the next commercial.
Right.
And, right? So, how did you, like, I know you reached a point in 2022 where you decided to change your life and do what you do now. But I know
Mhm.
that it required a lot of work to overcome loss after loss after loss.
Yeah. Well, so I'll backtrack to 2015 when I did become a grief recovery method specialist in 2015, but I didn't leave my nursing job until 2022.
Okay, got
So
it.
at the age of 30, which is way back before 2015, I found myself divorced. And I couldn't understand how I got there. My heart was
Yeah.
broken. I felt like a failure. I had a 3-year-old child. I was like, how could
Yeah.
this happen? I was so angry, and I kind of thought my life was over. I didn't know if I was going to be able to keep my home. I didn't know,
It's
you know,
30.
if,
Wow.
yeah, I didn't know if my job was just going to sustain me. I didn't know what was going to happen with our son. I was scared. I didn't think I'd ever find love again. Um, and so as I started moving forward, I realized at one point I was tired of having that victim mindset because that's what I was doing. Poor me, my husband left me. I'm a single mom. And I eventually was like, I'm not going to live this way anymore. This isn't what I want to do. This isn't going to help me thrive or find joy. And so I started working on my own healing. And that's how I found the grief recovery method. And when I started discovering really all the grief that I had been carrying, I realized why I ended up divorced is because I had stepped into a marriage full of pain. I grew
Wow.
up in an alcoholic home with an alcoholic father. I my first serious relationship was with someone that was very abusive. And so I had all this pain that I didn't know how to process because most of us are not taught when we're young emotional first aid. We're taught physical first aid. If you fall and you skin your knee, you're going to clean it, you're going to put a band aid on it. But we're not taught how to deal with our emotional health. And if we are, it's usually things that are not helpful. You know, you come home from school and you tell mom or dad, I had a horrible day. Well, here, have an ice cream or have a cookie and you'll feel better. And so we equate food
Yes, that's
with
one thing.
comfort, right? And so then continue that for the rest of our life. So it's little things like that we learn, but we don't learn oftentimes how to process our emotions. So when
Yeah.
I started healing and processing my emotions, I realized that I had been carrying pain for so long from so many things that had happened in my life. And when I started working through those, I found a new version of me. It was
Mm.
like the authentic version of me, the version that was free of that emotional pain and the weight that I'd been carrying for years.
And I imagine that didn't happen overnight.
No, it did not happen overnight. So before I ever found the grief recovery method, I was doing all kinds of seminars, workshops. I went to therapy, and all of them would like take the edge off slightly,
Yeah.
but it wasn't a long term fix. And fix isn't the right word, but it wasn't a long term healing. It didn't still didn't lead me to the joy that I wanted. And so it wasn't until I got to the grief recovery method and I really started looking at some of these things in depth and processing the pain that I was able to feel that weight lifted and I was able to move forward with a different set of eyes even. And it gave me the ability to see these things that happened in my life actually as a gift instead of something horrible that um, kept me small.
Wow. We were talking before we hit record about how um, the grief recovery method is not just for somebody who's lost a child or who's lost a spouse but it's for all different types of loss.
Hmm.
You want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I have a funny story. My husband now, um, we went through the grief recovery training together because we met like 2 months before the training happened, and he signed me up with him. And I said to him, I don't have any grief because at the time I'd lost grandparents, but I didn't have a really close relationship with them. He'd lost a child, and so that's why he wanted to go through it. So anyway, he signs us up and he pays for it, and we get there, and within the first hour, I had this sinking feeling. I was like, "Oh wow!" Like I had equated grief with only death. But grief is from any change or transition in our life. So it's divorce. It's even having a child or getting married because that is a life change. And while it can be happy, there's also things in your life that you're giving up because you're going to do something different in your life. Um, Obviously, death of a child, death of a parent, a friend, retirement is a grieving event.
Mm,
Our
divorce.
children growing up and leaving home is a grieving
Yeah.
event.
Yeah.
So, pet loss, that's a huge one that people struggle with because, so many people have a deep bond with their pets and it's often minimized when they lose their pet. You can get a new one. Well,
Yeah.
we can get a new pet, but that doesn't replace the last one. It's like saying you can get a new parent if your parent passes away. You just can't replace a loss.
Right.
So yes, there are so many things that lead to grief. And, I don't even like to try and put them all in the category because, you can have grief just after a conversation that doesn't go well with your spouse or your child or a friend. So I just want people to hear that grief is normal and natural. It's a reaction to any type of loss, anything that doesn't go as you hoped or expected. And it's important to allow yourself to feel those emotions that come up during those times.
Yeah, it's really, I don't even have a word for it, but every transition, when
Hmm.
we move to something new, we've changed something old, and
Yes.
we have to incorporate that change into our
Hmm.
lives. And I talk a lot about losing my son, and that's one of those, I'll never get over it, but it's part of my life now.
Hmm.
And the hole that is in my heart is, it's still there. It's always going to be a scar, but it
Hmm.
doesn't throb as urgently as it did when it was
Hmm.
brand new. And so it's part of me now.
Right. Well, and there's all those hopes, dreams, and expectations you had for that relationship with your son. You know,
100%.
people that lose children, milestones come up.
Yep.
Oh, my son would have been graduating this year. And what would he have been like? And, what would his spouse be like? And what would he be doing in his life? All those
I've
things
thought
that you
about
don't,
all those things. Yeah.
yeah, all those things that you don't get to experience. So they, yeah, cause ongoing grief.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how is the grief recovery method? I know I'm getting a little bit off track here, but I'm super intrigued.
Mhm.
Um, how is the grief recovery method different from traditional therapy?
Okay. So the grief recovery method is therapeutic, but it's not therapy. So therapy, um,
Okay.
so I'll just talk from my experience. When I went to a
Yeah.
therapist, I would go and I would talk about whatever was going on in my life, and they would listen. But there weren't really any tools to kind of help me navigate through these. And I'm not saying that every therapist practices that way. That's what I experienced. The grief recovery method is actually an evidence based tool, it's an educational tool. So, we're not therapists, we're teaching people this tool and we're supporting them. We're holding space and walking them through it. And it's a tool that can help you with any type of loss in your life, any type of grieving event from the past, in the present, in the future. And what I really love about it is, unlike traditional therapy, someone doesn't just need to come back to me every time they experience something painful because they have this tool. Now, they always can call me up and say, "Hey, Dawn, I
Yeah.
just want to meet with you. I want the support." Like, I'm always there for my clients, but they have this tool that they can use on their own moving forward, which is really an empowering feeling for people because you can't always reach out and talk to your therapist when you need them the most, but if you have a tool that you can use in that moment, it can help you navigate those times with greater ease.
100%. I love that this is a tool that
Hmm.
can be used over and over and over again. And I imagine, just like with any tool, we develop a skill set to use the tool in our life.
Absolutely. And there's so much more in it too. Just we teach like foundational work. Like, we look at different myths and beliefs that we've held surrounding grief and where those have come from. Because oftentimes we've carried beliefs like that we should isolate during a time of sadness since our childhood. And so we need to look at those because it explains why we deal with things the way we do today.
100%. So the name of it is the grief recovery method.
Correct.
And this is a tool you can use over and over again. So anytime
Hmm.
that there is an obstacle or a period of transition, or something that is a blatant, painful loss,
Hmm.
um, this tool is still a part of your life. I love that
Absolutely.
there is a tool that's repeatable, because I don't think we're equipped emotionally with tools in our society at all.
No.
And and like you said, my natural response is, oh, just go sit in a corner and cry until I get over it, and then move on and
Mhm.
be really strong. And that's not getting over it.
Yeah, we talk a lot about that. Men historically have done this, just keep being strong and keep busy. But now women are doing it more because we're in the
Yeah,
workforce. We're expected to take care of so many things, the family home, the children, our careers. And so we all tend to do that. And it's one of those things that we continue to do to kind of numb ourselves and not have to deal with the pain. We talk about it in relation to STIRBs. We call them STIRBs, short term energy relieving behaviors. It's those things that we do to navigate our way through really difficult times and numb ourselves because we don't have the tools to effectively deal with the pain. And so it
yeah,
is things like, working all the time. Um, it's
I'm not.
drinking. It's overeating. It's shopping too much. It's social media, scrolling for hours,
Yeah,
binge watching Netflix. Now, so many of these things in moderation are okay and they're normal,
yeah,
but
for
it's
sure.
when we use them to numb ourselves that they become a stir.
Wow, this is so good because you're making it so simple. And what the best part of this is that there's hope. So even
Hmm.
if we are doing some of these things in our lives to try to overcome grief and loss, transition, um, there is a tool out there that we can plug into and bring a strategy into our lives to change.
Hmm. And I think one of the important things is, if we're engaged in, behaviors that we know probably aren't helping us much, but we don't know differently, is to
Yeah.
just be gentle with ourselves. Because we often beat ourselves up. Why don't I feel better?
Yeah.
Why am I not doing better? Why am I participating in this activity when I know this isn't healthy for me? Well, I just like to remind people you're doing the best that you can today. Give
Yeah.
yourself some grace.
With the tools that you have for today. And
Yes.
okay, so how do we? I've never heard about this grief recovery method. So how do we find out more about it? I know you are going to tell us you have two books. Tell us more about that.
So, to find out more about the grief recovery method, you can look on my website. You can schedule a call with me. I love to just talk to people. It's no pressure. I like to support individuals going through difficult times because I remember what it felt like to be alone, to
Yeah,
not have the support that I needed. My books are another thing. So, my first book, Journey to Peace and Healing, I wrote um, right after I left my nursing career. And it has parts of my story after my divorce and things that I did to help me heal and find peace again. So every chapter has some reflection questions. It really is for somebody to dive deep into different aspects of their life. Second book, Journey to Self Discovery, is 100 days of kind of reflection for people. So it's
wow.
short little pages with something inspiring, something uplifting, and an affirmation at the bottom. The reason I wrote that book is because when I was going through a divorce, I was devastated. I could not pick up and read a self help book.
Yeah.
All I could do was read one page. And so I would find these daily readers and I would
Right.
just open up to whatever page, you know, felt like it was the page for me for the day. And I would read something and I would keep that with me during the day and remember what it said. And that would help me focus on more positive. Like, there is hope, there is a future for me. So that's why I decided to write that second book. It's just because I know when people are grieving, it's very hard to
Mhm.
concentrate. And so just having something short, small, that can inspire you and help you get through the day, I think is
Yeah,
really empowering.
I love that. Um, Tell us what your website is.
DawnMichelleJackson.com.
This is really cool. I really I don't even have words, but it makes me feel hopeful. And you know, the antithesis of grief is hope. And I remember when my son died. I lived in San Diego, and this is going back to 1992. But I did not see the sunshine until August. I remember the day when I noticed that the sun was actually shining. Now, the sun shines 24/7 practically in San Diego in the summer.
Right.
And so for me to not have been able to notice the sunshine for 8 months is crazy. But I know that that's a reality. And for a lot of us, when we're going through loss or
Mhm.
trauma or change or right, we can't see outside of what's going on and our feelings. And so
Yeah.
I love that you just offered a tool that it doesn't fix people instantly, but it offers some hope along
Yeah.
the way in the
Yeah.
middle.
It's so important because when we're grieving, we often feel like nothing is ever going to change. We're so stuck in the pain that we don't think there's hope for the future. And so just realizing that there is, you know, things will change, but it's not that time changes things, it's what we do in that time that changes
Oh,
our
that's so
outcome.
good. Yeah.
Because many people say, or we beat ourselves up, why don't I feel better? Or somebody says to us, well, shouldn't you be over this by now?
Oh my
And
gosh,
so
I heard that a few times.
I always ask people, can you raise your hand if there's something that's happened over 5 years ago that still hurts your heart? Everybody raises their hand. Then I go to 10 and 20, and
Yeah.
ask people, if time healed your heart, wouldn't 20 years be enough? And that's a big aha moment for people. Yes, it should be enough time, but it's what we do in that time. We have to choose to take action that helps us heal versus just moving through the days and expecting that we're going to feel better.
Oh, that's so good.
Hmm.
That's just so good. And it's so hopeful. You know, one of the things that we talk about on this, in this Roar Gallery, I should say, is that hope is a team sport. And,
Yes.
and so here you are offering a team, that people can join,
Hmm.
where you don't have to be a professional hope specialist to join this team because you have the equipment and the to teach the skill set, which
Hmm.
is really cool.
Yeah, I love the work I do. People always say to me, or they ask me, I don't know how do you do this? It sounds depressing. And I'm like, but it's not, because I watch
Yeah.
people physically transform by healing the emotional pain. I see them experience life in a new way. I see them focus on gratitude again, find joy in their life, where for years they've been weighted down by all this emotional pain. So for me, there's nothing better than this work I do. I love this so much more than being a nurse because I
Cool.
like helping empower people.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to ask you a weird question.
Yes.
Were you, before you had this tool,
Hmm.
but when you started seeing that there was a lot of grief in your life, were you afraid to face it?
I was. I definitely was. And I think pretty much everyone is afraid because I think many of us believe that if we feel these emotions that we've been trying to suppress, it's going to kill us. Now,
Yeah.
logically, that doesn't make a lot of sense, right? But that's the way we feel. is that we cannot get through feeling this pain. But
Yeah.
in reality, we need to feel the pain to heal the pain.
Yeah. I remember a long time ago thinking if I cry all the tears that are inside of me,
Mm-hmm.
I might never stop. And that was
Yes.
a scary feeling.
Mm-hmm. And that's one reason people don't allow themselves to cry, because they're afraid they won't stop. But
Yeah.
crying is so therapeutic. It's
Yeah.
so healing.
I was listening to a speaker talk about the actual chemicals that are released in our bodies when we cry
Mm-hmm.
and how it's actually a release and super cool. But
Yes.
a lot of us are afraid to cry.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of us were taught that we're not supposed to cry in childhood. We hear things like, you know, don't be a crybaby, or,
Oh
you
gosh,
know,
yeah,
especially men, as little boys. Boys
true.
don't cry. I mean, all these messages that we pass on to children, it's really hurtful, but we
Yeah,
don't realize it at the time, right?
yeah. Who knew that there was a tool that I know I keep saying that, but it just I love that there's a tool that you are trained, that you
Mm-hmm.
can help people understand how to use this tool, and that
Mm-hmm.
they don't have to talk to you for the rest of their lives in order to use this tool. That's the coolest
Mm-hmm.
part of it. It's like a freedom thing.
It is, because it empowers people. There's so many things in life that keep people dependent
Yeah,
on either a person, a service, whatever it is. But this gives people empowering feeling, like, I can do this. I have this tool. I know how to do this. I know how to navigate difficult things in my life. But I also know if I want some support, I can reach out. That's okay too.
yeah. This is just amazing. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of the anti conversation about grief.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's definitely the anti conversation to suck it up, Buttercup.
Definitely. Yes. Yeah. I don't even want to go there. How many times I've heard that, and it teaches us that our emotions, there's something wrong with them. When in reality, there's nothing wrong with our emotions. They're pointing us
Yeah,
to where we're experiencing pain and what needs to be healed.
yeah. I love this. I absolutely love this. Thank you so much for
You're so
being here
welcome.
today and adding hope to our Roar Gallery. And gosh, to everybody who listened, thank you so much for being here. Share this out. I know there are people who are hurting and dealing with grief who would love to know that there is a tool that they can learn and use and grow
Hmm.
and live and
Yeah.
never give up.
And, one thing I want to remind everybody is we all have chapters in our life, and we've experienced some painful chapters, but they're
Yeah,
not our whole story. We can
right,
have some beautiful chapters in the future. What's happened in the past is a chapter, but it's not the whole story.
right. Yeah, your story's not over. Never give up.
No,
This has been amazing. Do you have any final thoughts before we close?
I guess my final thought is to just be gentle with yourself.
Yeah,
Remember that, we all grew up and we learned certain ways to navigate grief, and maybe they weren't the most effective. But like we had talked about before, you've done the best that you can, and it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask for support,
yep,
and grief is normal after any loss or transition. So just be
yep.
gentle and loving with yourself and get the support that you need, that's going to help you thrive and find joy again in your life.
Absolutely. And, we talk about, this thing that we overcome, an obstacle that keeps us from doing it, and then an action to take. You have just provided such a beautiful, simple action that people can take to just move through the obstacle of
Mhm.
grief that's holding us back. And again, tell us your website one more time. It's going to be in the links.
DonMichelleJackson.com.
Okay, beautiful. All right, we're going to have it in the links. And oh my gosh, I am so inspired and I'm so excited. And I feel like our gallery just got a big dose of hope. Thank you so much
Thank you, Kimberly.
for
What an
being here.
amazing, what an amazing conversation. I just loved it.
Absolutely, me too. All right, we have a tradition.
Okay.
Before we go out, we've got to say never give up, because we are here because the human race is not meant to be run alone, and hope is a team sport. And on the count of three, um, one, two, three, never give up.
Never give up.
Never give up. All right, everybody, share this episode out, and we will see you next time. Dawn, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Bye.